Today we're going to compare the iPhone XR versus the Huawei P30. Both of these phones are on the lower end of the whole lineup, and Huawei P30 actually offers two more lenses than XR. So let's see if a single camera lens on XR can stack up against two or three of the Huawei P30s. So this is a low light front facing test. Walking on a sidewalk, there are street lights above me, so it should be pretty bright, or I should have some light source on my face. So yeah, let's just move on to the next segment with pictures and video quality.
In portrait mode, I do like how the Huawei looks more natural, whereas on the XR it looks too blurry along my hairline, so it looks a little bit too artificial. Now one thing on the Huawei, it looks like HDR doesn't work in portrait mode, but if you do switch it to normal picture selfie mode, then the HDR does work. In lower light situations, the Huawei does keep my skin tones a little bit more consistent, whereas it kind of faded or looks too flat on iPhone XR. My photography experience on both of these phones, I do like the Huawei much better because there's so much more options and variety you can shoot with. You can do the ultra wide up to telephoto, and now shooting in telephone mode, you can actually get good clear pictures. When I take pictures with the XR, I just feel like it's so boring and I can only have one option. There's really not much to do with it except for just point it, shoot it, and then just walk away. When you're traveling, going to all these touristy areas, concerts, and pretty much any real life situations, it's so much more useful having all these lenses where you can zoom in when you need to, still get clear shots. You can zoom in on the XR, but of course it's not going to be as clear. And in that mental note, if you know you're gonna zoom in, you just automatically think that the image is gonna degrade like a lot of phones out there, which is true, so that kind of pushes everybody not to zoom in on a lot of these phones. But once you experience a Huawei or the P30 especially, that really changes the game. That was just my personal experience. In the past, before the Huawei P30, I never zoom in or use telephoto lenses because I just find the quality not as clear as the main lens, so I avoid it as much as possible. If you love taking photography, or if you're more of the artsy creative person, the Huawei P30 is one of the best camera phones you will ever use. In terms of HDR, I would say both are really good. The iPhone XR, or just the iPhone in general, has a flat look, so you can see more in the shadows and also in the highlights as well, so that may conclude that the iPhone will have the better HDR, whereas the Huawei is more contrasty, the blacks are more black, and it looks more natural in terms of your eye. For the colors, I do like the Huawei much better out of the box, whereas on the iPhone XR it's flat, and for some reason it looks more blue or more cooler compared to the Huawei P30. So if you're a regular person who just wants to take a picture and share it up on Instagram or Facebook, Huawei P30 looks much better straight out of camera. Aperture mode is my favorite mode in any Huawei phone, so it basically takes DSLR pictures on objects and people, and you can actually refocus your focus point after you take the picture as well. Just like the front-facing portrait mode on the Huawei, HDR doesn't really apply to the aperture mode, but it does work in the normal photo mode. That's the only con I can see using aperture mode on the Huawei P30. So for a pro in aperture mode, you can actually use the telephoto lens, you can go 2x and then 3x, and it just makes the whole image looks more like a portrait mode picture, so you can zoom in more and the background looks a little bit more compressed. Now for low light, this is where I kind of side more with the XR. Throughout the lower light pictures, on the Huawei everything seems to be more cooler and it cancels out the yellow light that we commonly have on these streets. So realistically, the pictures we see on an iPhone is closer to what we see with our eyes. Another thing I don't like about the Huawei P30 in lower light is that we have a greenish tone that applies on our overall pictures. Now we can still use the telephoto lens, but the image quality is not going to be as great as the daytime, which is pretty much expected and common sense. Now zooming in with the iPhone XR compared to the Huawei P30 in low light, I would say the quality is closer to each other than daytime. Daytime, it's kind of clear cut which one is the winner, but if you look at these two images, the Huawei P30 is still a little bit better, but it's not by much. After the sun sets, this is where I favor the XR more than the Huawei in terms of HDR, because you can see more in the shadows, and this is a time where the greenish tones from the Huawei P30 introduces itself in the pictures. Huawei also has night mode, which is a big pro versus the XR, which doesn't have any of that. And in some conditions, you can actually see more detail, more texture, and a little bit more light from the dark shadows. You can use the night mode in any lens on the Huawei P30, so you can use the night mode on the ultra wide mode and on the telephoto lenses. For the most part, it's a mixed bag for me. Sometimes the auto mode looks better and sometimes the night mode looks better, but the main issue I don't like about the night mode is that sometimes it would apply a really green effect onto your overall picture. The most impressive thing about the P30 is that it can actually see in really dark places, whereas on iPhone, it can't really make out what the image is. Onto video, the stabilization on both phones are really similar. I can barely tell which one is better in terms of daylight. What is obvious is the color cast on these two phones. The Huawei is much more warmer, whereas the iPhone is cooler. When you point these two phones at the sun, here's the weird thing. On the Huawei, the sun looks more white, whereas it should be yellow like the iPhones. But the yellows on the Huawei that's casted on the people and on the environment, it really represents what we see. So I'm not sure why when we point back the Huawei back at the sky, the clouds should have that yellow gradients. Because of that flat look, the iPhone does do better in terms of HDR. In the darker shadowy areas, you can still see what's in them in the XR. For example, the person in front of me, you can still see the hoodie and more details in his hair. And also, I do like the fact how the iPhone XR just keep the sun more controlled and less spread out than the Huawei P30. Now for low light, it's obvious that there's more micro jitters on the Huawei P30 than the iPhone XR. It seems like the Huawei P30 does a bit better on the stabilization, but I would still give that up to get a more clear image, just like on the iPhone XR. For the colors, it's just like the pictures. The streetlights, the yellow streetlights is more represented on the iPhone versus the Huawei. And I do think the iPhone do a better job at the highlights, especially when you look into the stores. You can still see what's inside, or you can see more details inside the stores versus the Huawei where it looks pretty much overblown. The iPhone can shoot up to 4K 60, whereas on the Huawei P30 it caps at 4K 30. So for those who really needs 4K 60, I guess you can stick with the iPhone, but hopefully it will introduce 4K 60 in their next Huawei chip or Huawei processor. So for now, you're stuck with 4K 30. So I'm gonna end off with a small audio clip from both phones and see which one has the better audio. So let me know what you guys think about these two phones. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.